all the teams at least.
Yeah. I pulled up that's what I was going to do. Just at least the names. Yeah, there we go. All right. You ready?
I'm ready. Let's do it, buddy.
All right. How do we want to start this? I didn't really thought about it. Okay, anyways. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us for the first ever episode of the DECAF podcast, or the Decoding the Alliance Football podcast. I am one of your hosts, Jared, and joined as throughout the rest of the season, as always, by the most humblest of co-hosts, probably the greatest co-host, possibly future award winner, maybe MVP of podcasting in the future, David. David, how you doing today, man?
You know what? I'm doing great, Jared. It's hard to know if it's possible to be the greatest and the most humble at the same time.
Right?
But you do it somehow. I can do it. I think it's possible for me because I am the greatest and the most humble, and I am ready to talk some Alliance football tonight. That's for darn sure.
That's what I'm talking about. Well, obviously, this is the first episode, so we got to let our fans know what we're doing here and why we're doing it. Basically, the Alliance football just came out with its first week, and it got record numbers. It outdid the NBA for viewerships. And I think that's great. I think it's awesome that it really shows where the Americans' heads are at when it comes to sports, don't you think?
Well, it's a real testament to the marketing strategy going on here. The idea, they just came out the week after the Super Bowl. They
Perfect timing.
Keeping Americans' heads right into football, and that's a really important thing to do, is strike while the iron's hot. Spring football is a thing that's been done before. It's not something that's really held on before, so they're really going to have to try and keep this momentum going as they go throughout the season, which I think they can do. They've got a really interesting premise. They've got some different rule changes that we'll go through tonight as we go forward, to keep kind of people interested in and keep the game that everybody loves in their minds, but with new changes, with updates, and new ideas, new ways of thinking, and some really interesting features that I think people are really going to tune into throughout the season, Jared.
No, I agree with you 100%. And obviously there's a lot of excitement around it. There's a lot of really big plays that we'll get into. It started with the San Diego Fleet quarterback getting his head knocked off and no flag. So that was awesome to see. And I think there's a lot of people that are excited to see that the old school style of football might be back a little bit. But let's talk about what the AAF stands for, the Alliance of American Football. The whole point of them starting the Alliance of American Football, and Charlie Ebersol, formerly of CBS, and Bill Polian, former of the NFL, are the co-founders of this league. And basically what they're trying to do is they're trying to give athletes a second chance. And I mean, I love the idea of it, but however, we've been hurt before, David. We've been hurt before. We thought we saw that with giving athletes a second chance with NFL Europe, and that tanked hard. Yeah. We thought we were going to get athletes a second chance with the XFL, and for some reason, the McMahon family decided to run that into the ground the way they did. So this is take 3 with, and I will caveat this, there's the XFL coming back in 2020. So
there's options here, and we'll see if any of them are good. But right now, what I think I like the most about this league in particular is, as opposed to the XFL or other things, and the UFL, we've had other things as well. There's been a myriad of just different amateur leagues over the years, the 90s. It goes back a ways, and they've all just kind of fallen by the wayside. But what I like about the feel of this particular league is just the guys out there really just want to play the game. That's, there's obviously not a lot of money in it yet. It's an amateur league, and so there's probably not going to be a lot of money in it for these guys unless they're, picked up to another level of competition, like say the NFL, they get a contract there at some point. But until then, they're really just here to show what they can do, show off their skills, and play some football. And
Mhm.
it shows out there. There was, the product on the field out there was, I wouldn't say polished by any means, but it was really, really good for a first week. And we're going to see more of that. We're going to see it become better as the season goes along. And we're going to see some of these guys, these semi-professionals, turn into real stars in front of our eyes, Jared. That's what I'm really looking forward to.
Yeah, I agree. And so here's my thought process. So I was living in Canada for 3 years while I was stationed up there, and the Canadian Football League is basically their concept is obviously half Canadian, half American football players, but the whole concept of going up and playing in the CFL was to get ready and get yourself down to the NFL. And what this league does is kind of takes that a little bit more and makes it more of a Canadian league, which the Canadians are happy with. The Americans are happy with because now they get these big ideas. But let's talk about what the AAFL did. Charlie Ebersol, Bill Polian. I mean, their marketing scheme and the way that they built this league has just been phenomenal. Nothing short of well planned, well marketed.
No yeah.
And obviously, being part of CBS, they have that whole deal with CBS, and that obviously drove up the ratings because the week after the Super Bowl, everyone's on that football hangover of, and I think it definitely helped that the Super Bowl was god awful this year.
Yeah, can't argue with that.
So basically what they did was the week after Super Bowl, everyone's on this hangover and they're doing the itch, right? They're doing the itch. Like, oh man, I really want some more football. Not that kind of itch, David. Stop it.
No, yeah.
That's
a little bit of a different kind of itch. That's
yeah. You should get that checked out. No,
really, yeah. If you have that kind of itch, please see a doctor right away. We're not medical professionals here, either of us, but you should talk to somebody.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But everyone has the itch. Everyone has the itch for football, and I think the Alliance is definitely giving that to what they are. And I think these numbers will probably die out. I think a lot of the numbers off at the very beginning was a lot of just intrigue and interest to see what it's about, who's there, where it's coming from. I think the numbers will be a little bit different in the weeks going forward, but it is an exciting time for football fans everywhere to be able to see where these guys that they're going to get is coming from. As far as this marketing scheme and what they've done with the CBS, and they have deals with NFL Network, and you said TBS, right?
Yeah, TNT, that's right, yeah. TNT is going to get 2 games this year, and the NFL Network actually gets 2 games every week. And one thing that I found really interesting is the way that they have done commercials. They've got 60% fewer of the full screen commercials, the 30-second ads that go through. You probably are going to see more of that. We saw that trend in the NFL this year of a commercial playing side by side in between the action. So that's probably going to be a staple of Alliance football games. But that's a really interesting thing that they've tried to do. They're trying to shorten the telecasts a little bit to just over 2 hours versus 3 hours, average for an NFL game. They're trying to keep the pace moving a little bit. So that's one thing that I think is really interesting that they can do.
I think the idea behind that, I think the idea of shortening the telecast and shortening the commercials, they go hand in hand. Yeah. I mean, doing the side-by-side commercials means you can still run plays. You don't have to take these TV timeouts that you have to take every 5 minutes that you do in the NFL.
Yeah, I know. Major League Baseball has had this problem for years of the game just slowing down instead of speeding up, and this amateur football league managed to get it right on the first try. Like, you know what? Good for them. My hat's off to them.
Right. Well, I mean, it helps when you have the son of Dick Ebersol running the league, right?
He's got the pedigree and he's got the experience too. He definitely rode his way up in CBS. So yeah, he knows what he's doing, I'd say.
So from a marketing standpoint, they got all the right players where they need to. Well, what about this front office? I mean, they got some big names in this front office to head up. Who's in charge of what? Let's talk about Troy Polamalu is the head of player relations. Obviously, a much-loved linebacker, former linebacker for the Steelers. And obviously the star of every Head & Shoulders commercial you can ever think of.
Well deserved too. My God, have you seen the man's hair?
it's gorgeous. It really is. And then the star of the anti-Arm & Hammer or the anti-Head & Shoulders commercial, Heinz Ward. I don't think he's ever had hair. Is head of.
How weird would he look with hair? Like, isn't that really as it should be? There's like a balance there. Offense, defense, hair, no hair. I think that works.
I feel like we need to Photoshop Hines Ward with Troy Polamalu's hair just to see how it turns out.
I don't know. That might break the like not just the internet, but the universe. That might not. You may not want that. May not end the way you want it to.
Oh man, so we have some other big names in here. If you guys don't know, Eric Schwartz, the head of technology, that's a big name. Din Mann, head of content and marketing, which was a huge sign for them. And then as you get down, the biggest surprise that I see is Mike Piera is the head of officiating consultant. And I mean, that's a big sign. I mean, he was the head of officiating for so long there at the NFL. And as we get into that, let's talk about how they're doing the officiating and how in 1 week they have changed every football fan's mind about how the NFL has ever done things and how the NFL should start doing things.
Well, absolutely. I mean, I don't think there was a person alive who watched any Alliance football this week who hasn't seen the hit on the San Diego Fleet quarterback who just got, I mean, we may have discussed it earlier. He was demolished. His helmet came flying off, and there was no flag after that play. It was kind of refreshing to football fans who – and there's an understandable movement toward player safety in the game right now, but there's also a lot of frustration, especially in the kind of calls we saw that during the playoffs this year, the AFC Championship game, and Tom Brady getting brushed with a hand, and that's roughing the passer versus a guy who gets his lunch taken away from him. And Absolutely. there's no flag. That was a little bit refreshing to see, I'm sure. Maybe it was a little bit of an extreme the other way, but I'll take it. You know what? It's fun to watch a good hard hit in football every once in a while.
It really is. And one of my favorite things about this whole thing is there's literally the camera in the sky that they have for the NFL. They use it for television broadcast, but they don't use it for anything else other than the show. But in the AAF, they have this eye in the sky. There's literally an officiant up in the booth watching this eye in the sky, helping them officiate. So if there is, for whatever reason, a roughing the passer that's just a brush that for whatever reason the guy had a bad angle on, the eye in the sky is going to call down and be like, hey, pick that flag up, you idiot. Like, that's not a pass interference or a roughing the passer. So I think that is a huge thing. And the other one that I really love about the AAF and what I'm really excited for too is watching the challenges and being able to go up into the booth and see what they're thinking, see what their thought process is. I saw one from a game, and I don't remember which one it was, but they went up to the officiant, and the lady up in the booth, she was very straightforward. She goes, I don't know, like, it looks like it's moving a little bit. Can we get a different angle? And it went through the whole process, and you saw her thought process the whole way through. Whether it was right or wrong at that point, I was like, well, I can't be mad. At least I know what her thought process was. I love it. I love it.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's going to be more frustrating times where it's going to be obvious to one person and we'll hear the thought process and we'll go, but what are you talking about? But still, It is good to have that transparency, and that is one thing I think that the NFL has done an okay job in recent times of, picking up rules from other, and I think this is a really good place for them to maybe learn something, especially with the officiating issues that they've had. I think the AAF has just come out and shown everybody there's a refreshing new way to do a lot of things that the NFL, is just not going to try for whatever reason, because there's old guys who have done it this way for 1,000 years in charge. So now we've got, a refreshing different option here that we can do something different. And the fans are really going to respond to that, I think, as the season goes forward.
Absolutely. I'm 100% on board. I think it's awesome. So the other two people that we didn't really get to talk about, but are big players in this that you probably understand, Justin Tuck and Jared Allen, both former NFL players, are the Player Engagement Board of Advisors. They just have the staff just from the front office. And now we're not even talking about the teams. And we can get into the level of talent. I mean, so many former NFL coaches being coaches of these leagues. I mean, they really planned out exactly what they want. They were very meticulous, which I love. Let's talk a little bit about what teams are there, and then we'll go into a little bit about how the players were selected. Obviously, this is the first, if you're still wondering what we're doing, this is the first episode of the DECAF podcast. We're decoding the Alliance football, and we're making sure that you guys understand exactly what we're going into before we start breaking down exactly what's going on week to week. Thanks again for joining. Also, please, as we are a brand new podcast, make sure you guys are hitting that subscribe button and share button. We are also on Twitter. I believe our Twitter handle is DECAF Podcast. So hit us up, find us, follow us. We would love that. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. All right, back to it. So let's talk about the teams that we have in the league. And I'm pretty sure they're split up West Coast and East Coast. So on the West Coast, obviously you have the San Diego Fleet, the Arizona Hotshots, the San Diego Commanders, and the Salt Lake Stallions.
That's it. That's the team, baby.
Yeah. Is that who you're going with?
Yeah. Oh gosh, yeah. We'll get into that in a little bit, but I'm declaring my allegiance now. Go Stallions, baby.
Go Stallions. Oh
yeah,
man.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. We'll discuss this in a minute because I feel like we're gonna have some bets coming up pretty soon. Because there'll
be some betting.
I am a Broncos fan through and through, but I'm not on the Stallions bandwagon. We'll get to that in a minute. On the East Coast, we have the Memphis Express, who are to be known as the Patriots of the AAF. We have the Orlando Apollo. What?
They're going to be known as a Patriot. Okay, they'll be the Patriots of the AAF. We'll see.
And not that the fact that they're going to be any good, they're just the most hated. I think they're already the most scrutinized team in the AAF, and the AAF's only been around for 1 week.
Well, with a coach like Mike Singletary, all right, I
think that's where it started. Yeah. So absolutely. We have the Orlando Apollos, Atlanta Legends, and Birmingham Iron. I will mention that all of these teams are from southern states, or on the West Coast. They're all warm states. It's kind of hard to have a spring league in the north. I mean, it's hard enough to have an NFL team in the north during the winter, but in the spring league, it's really difficult. This is where it's starting, right? Eight teams. Is where it's starting. And I'm sure like over time they might expand a little bit more to bigger, more 8 teams. But what I do like is that they chose, for the most part, other than Atlanta, and Arizona's in like the boondocks of Arizona, so that doesn't count. But other than Atlanta, all of these teams are from non-football like NFL teams. Like there's no NFL players in these cities that they're in. And I kind of like that too. It gives the cities a little bit more of an idea and a little bit more excitement to get into.
Well, that's true. Hopefully they good residents of San Diego are not taking that too harshly because, well, I don't think I have to go through what they've gone through already. They've been through enough. But
hey man, so I got the tail end of that.
Yeah.
You're bringing up some memories here that I can't. That's okay. That's fine.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to get into Jared's an emotional man, and we don't need to get into that on our first episode. We're gonna move on. Obviously, Atlanta does, of course, have a football team there. Whether or not they're any good most years, I mean, they had a pretty decent swing there, and then some unfortunate things happened to them. But there's other teams here,
24-3.
Right. Well, we're not going to talk about that. Other teams, San Antonio, there is especially a market that I have heard in recent years connected with the Raiders when they were thinking about moving. That was going to be a big site for them. So there are cities here that are, bigger cities that maybe haven't had NFL teams before, but are hungry football markets. They are to have some sort of content in there. And I can think of, several other cities that I'm sure if the Alliance does decide to expand a little bit, maybe in the Northwest, Portland is probably one that would be a great expansion site but this is way far in the future and total speculation on my part. All I'm saying is there are room in other markets that are probably hungry for some sort of professional football that have never had exposure to that before. And that, you're right, I think is something really smart that they're doing in some of these markets now.
Yeah, it just goes to the meticulous planning of the organization and what they've done. It's just, I can't say enough how well they've just, from the get-go, you could tell this wasn't just thrown together. This has been meticulously planned. And the one I like the most as far as like the decision is Birmingham. I mean, Alabama's never had a professional football team. Mm-hmm. And I'm so sick and tired of hearing Roll Tide. Where do you, it's all they have is college down there. And I think it's kind of nice for them to see something that goes into at least the semi-professional realm.
It's something that I think a lot of Alabama fans would tell you, or people from Alabama would tell you, that is their professional football team, and they're generally pretty okay with that.
Oh yeah.
But I think that you're right in that just giving them those kind of markets exposure to something else, something that's maybe refreshing with some different rules that they've never seen before, semi-professional players, and maybe players that used to play at their favorite universities. For instance, the Birmingham team, they've got the rights to, and we'll get into this a little bit later too, but the Birmingham team has rights to colleges and college players from that state and a lot of that region.
Right.
So even players from the smaller colleges who would maybe not have as big a chance in the NFL are going to get exposure and put their names out there in a way that they weren't going to be able to before.
Right. And I think the smart process about that, we'll get into that here in a minute too, on how the player allocation is decided. But I think the smart thing about how that ends up working is that now that those players that these guys have followed for the last 4 years of their college career, and maybe they didn't get picked up by the NFL, Alabama guys, most of the time they do, but if they don't get picked up by the NFL, they can go play the semi-pro league that's still in their city, right? They're still in their state, and they can go watch. Again, another very smart thing that they're doing that helps get followers from that college level. So you think we have a certain amount of followers now, just wait till their favorite players are playing for these leagues, or their brothers or sisters are playing for these leagues. I think it's just a really smart deal.
Absolutely.
So so before we get into how player allocation, actually, let's just do player allocation. Let's start off with player allocation. We'll get to the other part here in a minute. So so the other thing too, guys, if you guys are following us, we have a YouTube page. I'm pretty sure it's it's DECAF Football Podcast. We'll figure it out. But hey, we got a YouTube page. Be on the lookout. We'll post it on our Twitter and in our Instagrams and whatnot. In our MySpace. As soon as it's on MySpace, we'll let you guys know. And
we'll get that. We're gonna get that MySpace page up real quick.
Yeah, but we do these shows live for you, and if you guys want to come on and watch us, we got some pretty ugly mugs that you guys could stare at. But we do a lot of the videos too. So as we're talking about this, I'm going to pull this up. Is the Alliance of American Football player allocation. So phase 1 is the college selection.
And just a note to everybody who does watch us live, you're going to see some stuff that's going to get edited out later. So you're really on the ground floor here.
All right. So if I'm doing this correctly, Alliance of American, is this what you see? Is this what you see? You're looking at?
Yeah, I see it. Oh yeah.
All right, cool. Here's the player allocation. Here we go. So phase 1 is the college selection. So I'm going to use probably one of my favorite broadcasters, one of my favorite players when he was playing, just someone with a lot of heart, Andrew Hawkins. If you guys don't know who he is, he's an amazing, he does the NFL Snapchat. He does NFL. I mean, he's just the hardest worker in the sports business right now. Anyways, his story is he started out at Toledo College and ended up going on to play in the CFL for a couple years before he finally got a shot in the NFL. Ended up having a very good career in Cleveland for a little bit. He was in Cincinnati for a little bit, went to New England before he ended up retiring. Anyways, that's who I'm going to use in this. So phase 1 college selection, all players allocated to teams based on where they competed in college. So let's say our guy Herbert over in Oregon decides that he's not going to go play in the NFL. He wants to play in the Alliance. He would be assigned to the San Diego Fleet because the San Diego Fleet have ownership or the rights to all players that are coming from Oregon. So they would have first dibs at them. Now, whether or not he wanted them or not, that's up to them. They can cut them and then they can become in the open section. So that's phase 1. Only certain colleges are listed in phase 1. For example, if your college is not listed in phase 1, then you would go down to phase 2, which is the professional selection. The professional selection is any NFL or CFL team that they played for, the most recent NFL or CFL team. So for example, the Andrew Hawkins situation where the most recent team he just happened to be signed with was the New England Patriots. So he would actually go play for Memphis. And that's how that would work out. And then everybody else falls into player 3. Anybody who got cut, their college and or didn't play in the NFL or CFL, or their college wasn't located, it all comes into open. At that point, it's just free agency. Anybody who wants to sign them, they can go try out for whatever team they want. And that's kind of how the system works.
Oh boy.
Oh, I'm working on it. Hey, technology's hard. All right.
Yeah. Like I said, guys, ground floor. You're really on the ground floor right now.
So that's how this works. If anybody wants to play in this league, anybody can play in this league. They can go try out. They could do whatever they want. But basically, what it comes down to, the first selection is what college they went to. Now let's talk about how we feel about this. Most of these colleges are based out of the colleges that they're looking at are based out of what team is in that general vicinity, right? Like we said, the Alabama schools, all the Alabama schools go to the Birmingham.
That's right.
Most of all of the Texas schools, which I think is a little bit not fair, to be honest with you, goes to the San Antonio team.
Now,
right?
Sure, but Jared, there's a lot of good schools in California, and let me look and see where they all go. But I think I could probably take one guess. And
right, but let's remember. Okay, yeah, I'll give it to you. So USC, and we also have Oregon. San Diego Fleet have Oregon, USC, a lot of these good California schools too. However, it's kind of cool. Obviously, Orlando has a lot of the Florida schools. Memphis has the Tennessee and a lot of the Big Ten schools. So it's kind of interesting to see where they come from and where they're going.
Right.
And again, I think we talked about this too. I think it's cool. I think it's cool that you can kind of follow your team onto the next level.
Absolutely. Yeah. And even if there's a lot of college football fans who don't have a particular rooting interest per team. They just root for everybody regionally or find certain players regionally to root for. And it is going to be really, really interesting to watch some of these kind of players who don't necessarily have long NFL careers or maybe don't have NFL careers at all, but want to continue playing football. It will be interesting to see if those careers can blossom a little bit in the AAF.
Yeah. And I think the other cool thing too is, as opposed to the CFL, where you kind of have to go up there, you're making a lot less money, you're going to a completely new country, you have to do all the paperwork. With the AAF, it's very easy transition going from college, because not only are you going to that college, but anybody else that didn't get drafted or get picked up by those teams are also going to the AAF. So you're going to have people that were your former teammates, maybe some former coaches that are also at the AAF. Just makes the transition a lot easier for you. And it makes it just fun to watch too. I think that what we'll start to see as the league continues, as we're hoping the league is going to continue on for years and years, I think what we'll start to see is that teammates will start to follow teammates, and that these teams will start to get a lot more, lack of a better word, they're going to gel a lot more than they would if it was just kind of like a bunch of randoms. And I think that, again, like we said at the very beginning, the whole point of this league is to give people a second chance to get into the NFL. And I think it's going to be a huge thing. I think it's going to work.
Yeah, absolutely. They've got the partnership with the NFL, not in certainly the way that the NFL Europe did, where it was a direct path, but it's certainly going to be something where, the NFL, as we said earlier, is playing 2 games every week. It seems like a natural partnership to go that route, and that, you go back to the story of Kurt Warner, of course, who played, I think it was arena football for a long time, and found his way back to the NFL from there, and found his way into a Super Bowl at the end of his career. So it's something that these players are going to see a pathway for themselves. If they're on this stage, there's no reason for them to think that they can't get to that next stage if they make a name for themselves. And that's what I think a lot of these players are going to be trying to do. And that's why I think it's going to be really, really entertaining to watch this season.
And speaking of Kurt Warner, who's the poster boy for somebody that had to go to another league and end up starting from the beginning and working his way up, he's also with the Alliance.
He is, yeah. Everybody who watched the halftime show of the San Antonio and San Diego game this week saw Kurt Warner there doing the halftime report. It was really, really interesting to see him. I thought that was an enormous get for them.
Yeah.
And they've got a professional team. Adam Archuleta has called NFL games before. He's going to be a big name in the broadcast team going forward for CBS. And so it just, as you've said and harped on a couple of times, Jared, it does go back to the management and the front office moves of these guys who have really put together a strong team of professionals to carry this forward throughout the season.
Absolutely. They've done just a tremendous job. So one more thing before we get into the players and what we thought about the first week of the games. Let's talk about the rules. There's a few different rules for those of you guys that are following the NFL. I assume most of you guys, if you're watching the AAF, you're probably followers of the NFL first. basically the biggest difference in rules, there's a few. Obviously, we talked about the Skycam thing, right? So the Skycam can call penalties from the booth, like literally radio down, like, hey, you guys missed a penalty. It was an offensive holding, and they can throw it. It says mostly the Skycam's for player safety. And now I don't really know what that's going to entail, seeing as, the San Diego quarterback got his head knocked off and they didn't call anything. So,
yeah, right.
Obviously, player safety, depending on situational, obviously, if they're trying to throw punches or something that people aren't seeing, maybe.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's kind of a balance there. They've got an interesting rule in the AAF where you can't rush more than 5 players at a time at the quarterback, and you can't rush from further outside the tackles than 2 yards. So it's really going to kind of limit. Yeah, it's going to kind of limit what teams can do defensively. Obviously, as far as pass rush and blitzes go, you can only rush 5 guys, so there's not a whole lot of blitzing that you can really do. But it's also going to have to mean you're going to have to get more creative with gap blitzes, this, that, and that. The other, sending 2 guys at a single gap. Really, that's all you're going to have to be able to do. And the offense is going to be able to scheme more protections for that. So it's going to be interesting to see. Obviously, that's one of those rules that is going to benefit the offense. But if they're not going to officiate hits like roughing, like that one we saw this week as roughing the passer, that may be how that balances out a little bit.
That's a very, very good point. Other rule changes that we're looking at here. No more kickoffs, which I actually found
in general in this league. No extra points either.
Yeah, no extra points. There's not much for the kickers, but the kickoff thing, I'm pleasantly surprised that I kind of liked it, and honestly did not even realize that it was too much gone while I was watching this first week.
And that's one thing where there's going to be a big market for kickers in the NFL always. There's always going to be, just a list of guys that will get called for a tryout every year and get paid for it and go home, and that'll be their money for the year. So it's not as if there's a big market of professional kickers that are going hungry because the AAF doesn't do a lot of kicking.
Yep.
Yeah.
So since there's no kickoffs, this obviously means there's no onside kicks. So obviously we didn't run into this situation, but if they want an onside kick, they can elect to get the ball for a 4th and 12 conversion scenario.
Yep.
Yep. So only within the 5 minutes remaining, if the head coach wants to try, I guess for lack of a better term, an onside kicker to get the ball, they would get it for a 4th and 12.
I believe at their own 28-yard line, and then they have, as you said, 12 yards. And if they get 12 yards, they get a first down and 10. That, I think, is another rule that if the NFL decides to eventually get rid of kickoffs, which I think is probably a good possibility in the next 5 years, that is maybe something that they will adopt or try to adapt into something similar to replace an onside kick if they decide to get rid of kickoffs in general.
Right. And I think honestly they're using this league a little bit. Or I think this league is going to be kind of one of those like testing platforms with that situation, because I have a feeling this one's going to change here and there. It's probably going to end up going to 4th and 15 or some sort of something around those scenarios.
You're right. If there's like an absurd number of conversions, or just the opposite, that like almost none ever are converted, that, they may, you're right, tweak that something.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And so the only reason I could think of them doing a 4th and 12, I mean, as meticulous as they've been with this league, there's probably some sort of mathematics that go behind it. They probably ran all the numbers. They probably did everything. That the percentage of getting a 4th and 12 is probably the exact same percentage of getting an onside kick. That's the only thing I can probably think of. Again, I'm speculating here.
At the very least, yeah.
Yeah. And the other part about that 4th and 12, yeah, you're right. They get on the 28-yard line. If they get the first down, they get to keep the ball wherever that is, which I think is pretty interesting. Yep. And they can only do it inside of 5 minutes, and only if they're trailing. They cannot do it if it's outside of the 5 minutes remaining in the game, or if they're trailing by more than 17 points. So they have to be within 17 points to be able to try it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay.
I mean, that makes pretty good sense.
Yeah, it does. You don't want, and that's one thing that I think is really smart just to avoid. You don't want a ton of one-sided victories right away in your season, or really at any point in your season, because if that's what people are starting to see, they're going to tune out really quickly. They're going to see that some teams are really, really good and some teams are just really terrible. That's one thing that the NFL has really been able to do that a lot of professional sports leagues have struggled with, is parity. And in the salary cap era, that's helped. The salary cap has helped the NFL achieve that. And so it keeps games watchable because you've got that any given Sunday factor.
Right.
If these games become just blowouts every time, you're going to lose a lot of viewers that way.
Right. And I think I actually kind of read this wrong, so I'm going to reread this. Teams can only try an onside conversion inside of 5 minutes remaining. If it's not inside of 5 minutes remaining, they have to be trailing by 17 points or more.
Okay.
So,
all right.
So technically, inside of 5 minutes, no matter how much they're trailing by, they can try it. But if it's outside of 5 minutes, they have to be down by 17 or more. Which, so basically, again, that makes sense too.
But just everything I just said, just kind of crumple it up into a little ball and just toss it out the window and ignore it. But this is a lot more fun.
No, that makes sense. But it does make sense because if it's in the second quarter and you're down by 20 something points, nobody's going to want to watch the rest of the game if you're not taking chances.
It's true. You got to get yourself back in the game, and this gives you a pretty decent chance to do it. It also takes the uncertainty factor of an onside kick just out of the equation and at least puts the conversion attempt into the hands of offensive players, guys who have, you don't have a ton of plays in your playbook for 3rd down and 12 or 4th down and 12, but you've got things. You can do things. There's options available that don't include run down there and hope your guy gets it before the guy,
Right. And I think from a football player and coaching standpoint, you're going to see a lot more practices running these 4th and 12 drills.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that adds a whole new section of the game. I mean, everybody runs 2-minute drills on Wednesday or Thursday practices. Now you got to think about running these 4th and 12 drills, not just a 2-minute drill, but now you got to worry about these 4th and 12 situations. And I have a feeling that what we're going to see from that is a lot of very cool, very thought out plays. Some of these maybe some couple trick plays will be fun. I think this will just turn into one of those fun leagues that's going to end up doing that. And then obviously it's going to be very interesting as far as competitiveness because the guys, these athletes that we're watching, they're not just some guys off the street. These are guys that are hungry and they want the chance to win it. They've already been denied once. Time to give them their second chance. They're hungry for it, and they can see the light at the end of the tunnel.
Absolutely. And that's one thing too, is you've got not just players, but coaches who maybe not the head coaches, because the head coaches you've got in this league are already pretty senior guys who have, a lot of them have had their chances in the NFL. Mike Singletary, Steve Spurrier, Rick Neuheisel was a big time college coach. I know Mike Martz is a big NFL name. But, those are guys who probably aren't going to be going back to the NFL, but certainly assistants, coordinators, and other guys on the staffs are going to be looking to use this as an opportunity to pad their NFL resumes as well. So they're not going to be afraid to try new things. They're going to try and get as creative as possible with the players that they've got and showcase what they can do with this level of talent to the next level.
Oh, yeah. It's going to be so much fun. I'm so excited. So now that we've talked about all that, we've told you what the AAF is all about. We've told you what to expect from them. We told you what the difference in rules is. Now it's time for us to take our stand. No, we don't allow bandwagon football fans on our podcast. So this is the time. This is where we decide. I don't care if I go, and how many games are there in the season? 10, right?
Oh, yeah.
10 games. I don't care if we go 0-10. I'm with the San Diego Fleet, man. I gotta say it.
Well, that doesn't surprise me considering your naval proclivities, let's say. But yeah.
And then the fact that I live in San Diego now. I actually posted this on my Twitter earlier today. I posted on or yesterday or something. I posted on my Twitter. When I first moved to Ottawa, it was the first year of the Ottawa Red Blacks, which is a CFL team. And in my 3 years that I lived in Ottawa, Ottawa won the Grey Cup, which is their championship, twice. So I moved there. The first year I moved there, they get a team. I'm just saying, I just moved to San Diego, and all of a sudden we get another football team. I see 2 championships in the time I'm here. I'm just saying.
Is that what you're saying? Well,
that's it.
It's some pretty bold things that you're saying there. I don't know if your team's going to be able to back it up. I don't know if your quarterback's going to be able to play. Old Mike Bercovici there. I'm not really sure how well his head is attached to his shoulders at this point, but I'm pretty sure it's got to be pretty shaky at best there. I am, as I said earlier in the program, I am riding with the Salt Lake Stallions all the way. Head coach Dennis Erickson, he's got NFL experience, of course. You've got a lot of good, decent, really good players in there. Some guys I recognize from the NFL. You've got Silver Sillinga, that former Patriots defensive tackle guys. I think he's probably got a Super Bowl ring kicking around his closet somewhere. So I think they're going to be okay. They've got some great colleges that seed into them. Air Force, obviously, go Falcons. Sorry, Jared, don't mean to insult your Navy sensibilities there. We've got BYU, Colorado State, Utah, some big names. Also, the NFL teams that seed into that team, both the Denver Broncos and the Green Bay Packers, not to mention the Seattle Seahawks. So some pretty decent number of Super Bowl champions among those teams. So I feel pretty good about my choice. I think we're going to go all the way this season and every season. I don't think that San Diego's got much of a chance when it comes up against the Stallions, but we'll just have to see how the games play out, I guess.
Yeah, see, you're wrong.
Okay.
And that's all. Yeah. So here's what we got. Here's the San Diego. We're not going to go through all the teams, but at least our team, because I think we're excited for it. So the San Diego's college experience. We have Colorado. I'm not sure how we have Colorado and you guys have CSU, but I'm cool with it.
Yeah.
We obviously have a lot of the California teams: USC, Stanford, San Diego State, Fresno State, San Jose State. UNLV is another huge one. California at Davis, Cal Poly, Sacramento State, the University of San Diego. And then
interesting note, Jared, as I'm looking here, if Justin Herbert was to eschew the NFL next year and go to the AAF, he would actually come to my Salt Lake.
That's right. You're right. Oregon is part of Salt Lake. I forget about that. Now, I don't think Herbert's going to go anywhere near the AAF. But
that man's got #1 overall pick written all over him. Unless we're not going to get that far into that rabbit hole.
The other teams we have out of California, obviously, as I mentioned, Colorado, Washington and Hawaii are both on there. And I will say, I also lived in Hawaii for a few years. There's a lot of talent coming out of Hawaii that I feel like is underappreciated as well, coming out of that university. So I don't know, man. I think you got a tough schedule going ahead of you.
Is that right?
And the NFL teams that we're associated with, the NFC champion Rams.
Ooh.
The Chargers, who let's not talk about them. Also, let's not talk about the Raiders, and then the Lions. Okay, so we have some pretty bad NFL teams.
You got some teams there, buddy. Yeah. And then I look through my worst NFL team right now. Wow. I mean, considering the records last season, it's got to be Denver, actually. The Green Bay was pretty bad last season. Not quite as bad as Denver, but still, Raiders, huh? That's
okay. Hey, let's not hate. Hey, there's always years, and let's also remember that you guys, if they were good, it's because they kept all their good people. The Raiders, let's not forget, got rid of all their good players. So maybe they just gave them to the Alliance. I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I mean, maybe they'll trade. They can't trade any of their players to the Alliance for first-round draft picks.
That's true. Yeah.
Unfortunately, John Gruden, I'm sorry, that's not how that works.
Although I wouldn't be surprised if he tried.
No, he's already made the calls, I'm sure, and they had to tell him, no, that's not your league. This is a different thing.
Different league, buddy. You got to call somebody else. Anybody else.
He really, really wants Christian Hackenberg back. He'll do it.
Speaking of which, let's go ahead and get our He Gone is our new segment. We're gonna call it He Gone, and you mentioned him, Christian Hackenberg. He gone.
Yeah, he gone. And that's something we're gonna be revisiting every week, guys. We'll probably have more of these, and probably multiple players per week. Trent Richardson was a prime candidate for He Gone this week, and only saved himself by scoring 2 touchdowns in a game that I think they won 40-6 anyway. But he had 8 carries for 17 yards and a fumble lost before those 2 touchdowns.
Right. So, yeah. It looked real sketchy for him in the beginning.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's one thing to watch, guys, is former NFL stars who maybe flame out in this league, as opposed to guys who never played in the league getting a chance to butt into stars. We're going to see some guys who are on the other end of that spectrum, NFL players who, I don't know if you guys are into Schadenfreude. Sometimes that can be pretty satisfying. If a guy he just didn't turn out for your team, it might be fun to just watch him, just tank all the way. Just
fail. Yeah, all of it. I'm waiting for the Brock Osweiler and Paxton Lynch to drop down just to see what happens.
One of the two is absolutely going to end up in this league, and we'll take all bets on who's going to be first.
Yeah. And you know what my favorite thing about this league so far is that you see these former NFL players, other than Trent Richardson, who everyone was excited to see, and obviously he started off bad. It was like, awesome, this is great, is to see some of these guys that did not get a chance just absolutely demolish these guys who were supposed to be big names in the NFL, right. like Christian Hackenberg. Like, I think that was a point to be made, was he got demolished. He looked like he had never played football before in his life when he got out there, and he didn't know how to throw a football. Like, he played soccer his whole career and then got drafted in the NFL somehow. And he gets down to this league, and next thing you know, he can't do it in this league either, against guys who never got a chance.
Yeah, absolutely.
And these guys that never got a chance made him look like an idiot.
And that's one thing I'm really excited to see is, there's a lot of guys who the NFL archetype is changing all the time. This year, Kyler Murray, who, if he's an inch over 5'8", I don't care what they call him at the combine, they're going to come up with all sorts of numbers that don't make any damn sense. But if he's a hair over 5'8", then I'm a leprechaun, and I'm not. So, he's going to be a first-round pick this year. And so that's what I'm talking. There's going to be guys who are playing in the AAF right now who didn't measure up for whatever reason. Right. Their hand size was wrong, or their 40 time was too slow, or et cetera, et cetera. Guys who put it all out there on the field every single week and will show it on the tape going forward. And guys who are going to get chances because of that, and who are going to change minds, just like Kyler Murray's going to do this year.
Absolutely. Honestly, I think I'm more excited about these open players, right? We talked about our tiers, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. I'm looking more forward to these tier 3 guys. Now, these are going to be guys that went to school at universities, at schools that just weren't in big conferences, right? They may have had decent seasons, they may have had all right seasons, but they weren't really looked at because they're at these schools that aren't playing on these higher levels like the SEC or the Big 10, Big 12.
Right.
So
absolutely.
I'm excited to see these guys pop up. I'm excited to see the Andrew Hawkins of the league come in here and be like, hey, I know I went to a smaller school, but I have the athleticism and the drive to be a good NFL player. And that's the guys that I'm excited to watch up. Obviously, the guys at Oregon, the corner at Oregon that didn't make it or whatever, like, that's fine. Like, he'll be okay, I'm sure. But I'm looking more for these small school guys that are finally getting their chance to go play wherever they want and make their tryouts and go just demolish some of these guys that went to the bigger schools because they were more well liked out of high school than they were. And
everybody loves the story, right? Everybody watched Rudy, Brian's song. Everybody knows, and everybody loves to watch it. And it's good to get a chance to maybe see that play out in front of our own eyes for a change, something that's going to be really something interesting to watch
on national television every weekend. I think it's something that's going to be kind of cool. And we will be here. The DECAF podcast will be here every week to walk you guys through it and help you guys out. We're decoding the Alliance football, guys. And thank you guys for following us and listening to us. If you're still listening to us, it means you kind of like us. So make sure you are taking a pause and subscribing to the podcast. Obviously, every little bit helps. We're a brand new podcast here, and we just want to see you guys be happy, and so hopefully we can give you guys a little bit of enjoyment and a little bit of insight into the Alliance.
Absolutely. And we want to be fan driven too. We really want to hear feedback from you guys. We really want to hear, if you're watching out there, God bless you. And thank you for giving us even a minute of your time, because, we're just here because we really love the game of football. We know that's why you're here too. And so we want to hear from you. We want to hear your feedback on our feedback. Tell us what you think when we're doing right. Tell us what we're not doing so well. And we're going to get better every single week, just like this league is going to get better every single week, guys. We're all here, we're all new at this, but we're going to get better because we all love the game of football and we all want to have a good time with it.
Absolutely. I could not have said it better myself. Thank you, David. As always, this is David and Jared for the the DECAF. I almost forgot our name already. It's been 1 week. I forgot our name already. We are the DECAF podcast.
Ground floor, guys. I said it
ground
before.
Floor. That's what we're here for. That's what. Hey, there's no edits in this. We're just gonna roll with this because why not?
Yeah.
So thank you guys for watching the DECAF podcast. David, before we go on or before we go off air, is there anything else you want to say to the listeners? Anything you want to say to the players, to the whoever else is going to be listening to us for the Alliance podcast?
Players, I swear to God, if any of you are listening right now, it's a miracle, and the world's probably about to end. But that being said, we would love to have you on our show. Come on down, talk about anything that you want, literally anything that you want. We will have you on. Listeners, Thank you so much. If you're listening, we appreciate you. We love you. Come on back. We're going to have more good stuff for you in the future. Throw us a like, throw us a share. Follow us on Twitter at the DECAF podcast, and we are going to be coming back to you next week with even more fun stuff as these games go forward, Jared.
Absolutely. We're going to have so much more fun. And we already have, there's a couple people in the back pocket that we're trying to keep, and hopefully we can get some people on here and get some players or coaches on here to give a little bit of an interview, get you guys some insight on what's going on inside those locker rooms. But until then, it'll be me and David, and you get to listen to our great voices. And if you go to the YouTube page, you get to see our beautiful faces.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So thanks again, guys. It was great. Thanks you so much for listening in. And we need like a send-off of some sort, don't we?
Oh, we do. We're going to work on a send-off for you guys. I swear to God, next week will be the best send-off you've ever heard. Until then, however, we're going to be decoding for you guys. So we're going to be. Yeah.
Is there like a
signing off for right now?
No.
Oh,
all right. Well, thanks.
I don't.
Just shut me down like that. I don't understand.
I really didn't even hear what you said, man.
Just
I'll tell you right.
No, I was trying. I don't know.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Thank you guys for listening. Have a good one, and we'll talk to you later. Bye.
Decode this.
Decode this.